Hey! So this may be quite controversial, but I'll just go ahead and say it. I think out of all the games released this year, Overwatch 2 is probably one of the video games ever made.
That's annoying.
Alright, in all seriousness, I actually am quite excited that Overwatch is finally back in the picture. But is it worth going back to if you're an OG player like me, or is it something worth trying out for all the newbies out there? Well, let's find out. Right off the bat, I do have to give props to whoever came up with the idea to move the game into free-to-play territory. Not only does this make it easier for me to play on whatever platform I want, but it's also now a lot more accessible, especially to those who haven't been able to play the original game. Of course, there's that mobile phone controversy, but that's a topic for another time. Another thing I love about the new Overwatch is that I get to do this again. Yep, that never gets old. Anyway, one of the most notable changes to the sequel is the switch to the new 5v5 format. While before, 6v6 was still pretty fun, but the double tank meta inevitably just ruined the game, and there was really nothing Blizzard could do to solve the problem. But with the new 5v5 format, teams are now forced to pick only 2 healers, 2 DPS, and 1 tank. While this brings with it some positives and negatives, other than that, team play felt more brief, but a lot more important, and 1v1 battles felt a lot more consequential to the overall outcome of the team's offense or defense. Something that most OG Overwatch players notice right away is an overall visual and graphical improvement to the sequel. Other than the heroes' new skins, the details definitely look somewhat crisper, and they can definitely stand up against other top PvP titles today. Yes, it's a minor improvement, but hey, they'd have to improve the graphics in some way to call it a sequel, right? So upon release, 3 new heroes will be available to play for those who've owned the original game before, one for each class of hero. There's the aggressive off-tank Junker Queen with her unique boomerang abilities and melee prowess. There's Sojourn, who plays like an alternative Soldier 76, but with a lot of burst damage potential. And then there's Kiriko, my self-proclaimed favorite among the trio, who plays like a Genji but can launch homing healing talismans, which actually means she more likely plays like a battle Mercy instead. But other than the new heroes, there's a lot of reworks done on several existing heroes. There's a lot of changes, but the most notable of them would have to be how the role of tanks has been reimagined. Now that Overwatch 2 has lessened the dependence on tank shields for team play, like for Orisa, her protective barrier ability to create immobile shields was completely replaced with a javelin spin, and her original support ultimate ability was replaced with a Terra Surge, which just further proves that Blizzard wants players to play tanks a lot more aggressively. But on a side note, there's also a whole new Bastion rework, and while it was temporarily removed from the game due to its glitchy ultimate move, it's now been recently reintroduced into the game, minus the massive carpet bombing. Another addition I quite enjoy is the new game mode, Push. This new game mode introduces new maps to the game, but also introduces a new mechanic, which essentially plays out like a reverse tug of war, where each team has the same exact objective of taking control of a robot to push a team barricade towards the opponent's base. The closer the barricade is to your team's base, the faster each player can reinforce their team after respawning, and the same is true for the other team as well. This mechanic just makes the game a lot more balanced in a lot of ways. Oh, but let's not forget about monetization. Ooh boy. Now that the controversial loot box has been done away with, a more modern day battle pass system has replaced it. While I do miss the free loot boxes you get from playing the game in the original Overwatch, the allure alone of buying loot boxes was so addicting that it really should have been regulated in the first place. But it's not over yet. For now, we're getting the traditional Overwatch experience. But next year, Blizzard has promised to introduce a campaign storyline. This isn't anything new since Overwatch had already implemented a lot of PvE limited time events in the past, during special occasions. But this new PvE storyline may just be something a bit more permanent and possibly episodic? I actually wish they'd take a page from Exoprimal's playbook and make their campaign missions into a PvEVP game mode, where the initial phase of the game will put 2 teams on opposite corners of the map and face off against the same type of AI opponents, as each team races to the middle of the map and eventually engage each other to achieve a similar objective. I feel like this may inject some more excitement to the campaign mode, in a more innovative way. But really, what makes a sequel a sequel? New game modes, new characters, and graphical improvements? Sure. Yeah, but when you say sequel, it has to be a continuation to the original story, right? And while the gameplay attracts most players to Overwatch, it's this story and lore that keep most hardcore fans and people like myself who crave immersion to keep us playing for longer. And since that first Overwatch was basically just a lot of setup and backstory, I really hope Overwatch 2 can finally get the main storyline started and tell us where we're actually headed. So anyway, stay tuned for a lot more Overwatch content in the future. GG everyone. Peace!